Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite vice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
Joining us here in the Laircast, we've got the city manager, Chris Murray. Nice to have you here, Chris.
Great to be here.
It's been a while since I've had a chance to talk to you. I think the last time might have been a Cable 14 show a couple years ago.
Yeah,
you were on the
actually, I
panel.
think
When you first got the job.
Exactly.
And you were being heralded as a communications pro at the time. Do you recall? No pressure.
That and collaboration guy.
Yes,
as well,
that's right.
yes.
Because Red Hill, the issue that
Yes.
had the community tied up for 50 odd years,
Yeah.
you seem to have a hand in maybe stick handling through.
Yeah.
What was your role in that? I mean, I realized you were part of the development of it, but did you actually help with the negotiations to get the sides working?
I was the, my title for 5 years was acting director.
Yeah.
And which was probably appropriate given the nature of the job, but
Explain. What do you mean, the acting part or the directing part?
the acting. But yeah, I was involved with the negotiations with Six Nations and dealing with a lot of the civil disobedience and government approvals and
Tree shitters.
that stuff. Well,
Tree shitters, did you call them? I was going to say tree sitters. I was going to ask him that next.
well, it was funny though. My son at the time was 4 years old, and he asked me one day. He said, "Dad, what do you do for a living?" Or words to that effect. And I said, "Well, I'm the head of the Red Hill Valley Project." He goes, "No, you're not." And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure I am." And he said, "Marco is." And I said, "Marco? Why Marco?" Marco Odie was my field engineer. And to my son, the guy that wears the hard helmet, has the orange vest, the boots, and bosses around all the truck drivers.
He's the big guy.
He's the big guy. And so you don't argue with a 4-year-old. So I said, and it dawned on me, and there's a connection to this job right now, is that at the end of the day, it was Marco that actually oversaw the construction of the project. I was just...
Yeah, but you were just involved in ending a 50-year dispute. So tell me, what kind of skill does it take to do that, or what kind of tactics did you use?
Well,
what did it look like from your perspective?
So I'll just give you a bit of back. I'm the fifth of 5 boys in a family.
Okay.
There's no girls. So I got to witness firsthand what my 4 older brothers did and tried to get away with. And so, you know, from a play in the sandbox perspective, I basically watch what people do and try to figure out what not to do. And,
now, did you do that as a survival thing because you were the
totally.
youngest?
Totally.
I went through more, one step ahead?
I went through more doors that weren't open than I can count. So, but you know, at the end of the day, you develop a thick skin, and you know, and
there's nothing they could throw at you that your brothers hadn't put you through.
More or less,
but tell me about the pressure. I mean, it's one thing to be involved in something that controversial. It's another thing to have people literally living in trees in protest of what you're doing. What was the pressure like during those days?
We knew about 2 years before we started construction that civil disobedience of some form was going to take place. And so we were prepared, I would say, probably about a year before it actually happened. We weren't expecting Six Nations to be directly involved, but we were, you know, working through what would happen if, you know, and if there was a protest, and what, given the different types of protests that were envisioned, and what would our relationship be like with the police, and you know, how would we deal with it from a legal matter? What were our options? And so,
did you ever feel panicked though? I mean, getting up every morning knowing that
you know what?
change?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, it was just a great party, and it was nothing like that. I mean, you know, if there's not some adrenaline going, there's something wrong. But you know, one thing I've always said to people, I said, running Red Hill was like walking through a jungle and hitting quicksand. It's not a question of if, it's when, because eventually you're going to hit it and you're going to sink. And one thing is for sure is that if you struggle in quicksand, you sink faster. If you remain reasonably calm and kind of look around, you hope that one of the people that works with you might care enough about you to lend you a branch that you might grab onto and get out. So
Laura and I drove down Red Hill one day and almost
Yeah, we're not pretty
Did you?
happy about that. Yeah. Okay,
No,
the
you
reason
mean
no,
twice.
Rob, to be clear, it's that other guy's problem.
Yeah,
He's
it's the
the one
guy
who
with
built
the
it.
desk, the guy who built the thing. Did you notice he gave us that distinction right off the top?
Yeah.
Because you know it's coming, or maybe you don't, but I think I've bitched about this publicly. The reason I today have a four-wheel drive was because we were going down the hill one day. We had like a baby and we had left them with Nona. Thank God, because we got caught in that flood.
That flood,
And the Red Hill, and only the SUVs with the four-wheel drive were able to get out of that. And we were like, what if our kid was in the car?
I mean, the biannual, once in a
the
century
biannual
one.
flood. I'm talking about the first one. Yeah, exactly. The biannual once in a century. So I'm like, I can never use this road again. And I was always a proponent of its completion unless I get a four-wheel drive. That can't feel like an overwhelming success to you. The fact that it floods so terribly.
No question. When you see the road under a few feet of water,
A few feet, people were being extricated by firemen from their cars. Like it was up to the top of vehicles on those exit ramps. People who tried to gun the exits were almost
speaks to
drowned.
the fact we got such a great fire department that is there
It's the other guy in the suit.
to support everyone in every situation.
Yeah,
But,
right. But we wish we didn't have those problems with it. So is it?
No question.
So why? I thought it won all kinds of design awards.
Oh, it did, and but like anything, it's designed to a standard. So,
Right.
and what we had on one of the events, the two events that took place, the first one we had what was magnitude-wise, it was a Hurricane Hazel scale rain event.
Right. Didn't feel that way going to IKEA on a nice Sunday afternoon. I got to tell you, I didn't think Hurricane Hazel was on the.
But it was actually, when you look at the weather charts, you see how focused that rain event
Okay.
was in terms of where it came across Hamilton. So that didn't help that was the first. The second one was as part of the whole Valley Restoration Project. They were in literally cleaning out or trimming areas to cut down brush and everything. And rather than simply take the material away and truck it to an appropriate location, it actually got caught up in the rain event, which wasn't anywhere near as significant as the first one, and moved all of the vegetation to blocked our grates. So when the water was coming down, instead of it going through the culverts, it basically got stopped where all the vegetation had blocked.
Now, that's a logical explanation that certainly didn't
No,
come out
exactly.
at the
I
time.
haven't heard that before.
I didn't have Mike Kirkopoulos with me to communicate it as effectively.
No, but
Yeah, but we're hearing it for the first time now.
But no, assuming
Maybe-
that's an accurate story, the finger is pointing in the right place.
Yeah.
That leads to that's not a crappy design. That there was.
No, it's not. It's.
But
I mean, at the
so you
end of
bring
the
up-
day, it was designed to what we
What's that?
call, to your point about a 100-year flood.
we have an exclusive
Which
here
happened.
on the Lair
I hear what you're saying, but by and large, the two events, it was
So,
a
but-
major rain event, and that it wasn't designed to accommodate.
But Chris, that begs the question, though.
Yeah.
Why here on our little podcast are we getting the first good explanation of what happened with those floods?
But I think we did communicate it to council what exactly had happened. So
Did it get communicated to the media? Because
I'm pretty sure
council's
I
like
did it
a
in
black
public.
hole of
so-
self-interest.
No,
right?
no,
I mean, I love them, but come on.
no. I think it was explained to them very publicly. So.
So let me ask you this. You had all this training, as I called you a communications expert. You clarified, added the word collaborator onto your title
Yeah.
or your description. You're now on council, working with council as city manager, arguably an extremely difficult job based on the amount of success previous city managers have had. There's been a lot of conflict between city managers and council, a lot of control struggles, problems with morale between city staff and council. Do you think you were brought in chiefly because people thought if you could negotiate the Red Hill crisis, really, you could negotiate those kind of crises that happen on council?
I think that certainly played part of it. That was part of the reason. I think, I've been with the organization since '95, so I've held, a few positions where there was some controversy, and I'm certainly a known quantity
Well,
to
you're in
them.
housing, but that's not quite to the level of city manager in terms of.
Yeah, I was again.
day-to-day.
I only went as far as director and in the organization, but my background's planning. My experience is in public works and in community services, so I've worn different hats over the years.
So how are you enjoying the daily political intrigue of our council?
I said it day one. I said I have the best job, I think, in Hamilton. So some people
Really?
might
Okay, we need to hear.
You need to get out more. Buddy.
some people
Lauren and I
might
would argue with you.
some people might question the sanity
Let me
on
ask
that
our,
one.
our audience here. We've got a radio host, Carrie Gray. I think you have a better job than the city manager.
No, but
I'm just thinking.
in all honesty,
we've got
but
someone from
I'll
Momtown.
explain it this way. I mean, look what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I couldn't have hit it at a better time from my standpoint.
Because of Pan Am, Hec 5,
Everything.
Peggy Gatewich, all of the
Well,
above?
no, I would say in terms of, everything from Go Transit interest that's increasing here. I'd say what you're reading about today in terms of Hec 5, what you're reading about in terms of the downtown campus. You're hearing Redeemers now talking about coming downtown.
Yep.
The fact is that the housing market in Toronto, and for that matter, the commercial market there is basically starting to hit saturation. We're a fantastic deal in Southern Ontario. So not everything comes easy, but I mean, you have to think that in the next few years, that more and more people are going to realize that this is a great community with a lot of great opportunities.
So where does that start? Because I'm not going to challenge, Lauren, by all means, but I think everything you just said is true.
Yeah.
And being downtown, we can all feel it, experience it. There's a lot of excitement happening. We haven't necessarily handled some of those big opportunities with aplomb. There's been some issues, Pan Am. We'll see how we do with HEC-Fi. And Lauren, by the way, is as a HEC-Fi bidder. So if people wonder why
No comment.
why he suddenly goes quiet, it's because he's knee deep in this discussion. We'll protect you from yourself, Lauren. How's that? Don't answer any tweets from spec reporters while we're sitting here, will you? Yeah. So there's been there's big opportunities. We haven't handled them all well, but to believe that the city is on that trajectory, it seems to me as though that has to be an inward belief. It's one thing for people to come to see the real estate, to see the opportunity, to see the development, and say, wow, we've had all kinds of ratings done in magazines. Champion Hamilton is one of the top 10 places to be, et cetera, et cetera. That's a lot of external feedback. Yeah. So when it comes to internally, don't you think that council first has to believe it and comport themselves in a way that sort of espouses that winning attitude, as opposed to some of the best word I can think of it is shenanigans that we see. They act to me sometimes like a council that's still stuck in the conflict days, as opposed to in the opportunity days that we're now in.
So from an internal standpoint, last year I think we brought forward and received approval from council for senior management team's first work plan.
First work plan ever?
Yeah.
As in you guys weren't allowed to manage yourselves until that point?
Well, the first work plan that looked at all the things that the various departments do and basically said, what is it that collectively we should be doing? What is it that working together with the resources that we're given, what should we be doing to kind of help move this community in a positive
So you're
direction?
saying to me, just so I'm clear, in
Yeah.
like 160 years, how old are we? I don't know, somewhere around there?
Yeah.
Council has always micromanaged the work plan of the bureaucracy?
No.
Or managed I don't want to say micromanage,
just
it's a
swam
negative.
freely, I think.
Or swam freely, or what?
No, I think it's, we had a strategic plan done 4 years ago. Council had approved that, and I think I was pretty public about that plan, that it reminded me of the plate spinner in Ed Sullivan. It's
With the 17 plates in the air?
Keep adding the plates, and if one falls off, try to make sure it doesn't hit the ground. It's just we're doing everything.
Oh, yeah. Plus
And-
Vision 2020 and everything else mixed up in our,
Yeah, and
in our
I'm,
strategic life.
in many ways, I'm a pretty simple guy. I can only do so many things at a given time, and which then begs the question, what are truly the priorities? And so what our senior management team work plan basically covered was the things that we feel we need to get on top of now, because I look at everything in kind of 10-year increments. The baby boomers are retired in 10 years. And if you think that it's costly right now to pay for health care today, in 10 years, about 49 cents of every dollar right now is going to health care. I would say in 10 years, don't be surprised if it's more like 65, 70, which means there's far less money for us to do all the other things that we're going to have to do in terms of looking after people, providing services in this community. And so it just strikes me that you don't want to wait till like year 8 or 9 to
Wait,
kind
this
of.
almost sounds like, well, two things. First of all, you can tell he's a collaborator by the whole language that he's using. I'm a simple guy. I can only do a few things, right? We're not buying
is
it, Chris,
true.
but it obviously works well for you. But it sounds as though you're sniffing around the edges of what one might call vision and actually, seeing what needs to happen with the city. You had some critique from one of our former guests.
Yep.
Graham Crawford, who's
Yep.
a bit of a corporate
meet with him?
management
Yeah.
corporate management vision
Absolutely.
expert. I think he said he made $5,000 a day flying around the world telling people how to have a corporate vision, and he wanted to sit down and talk to you about what he thought was the state of the city's vision.
Yeah.
Didn't get a meeting, which he complained about in Lair, and you can talk about it or not, but it's
Yeah.
only fair that you have a chance.
No, we met, and so he shared with me the specifics of what happened, and
So subsequent to the Laircast, you had a chance to
absolutely.
sit down? Okay,
And
good.
I mean, Graham is one of those people in this community that obviously cares deeply about where we are and where we're going, and really no different than any of us. And so just out of respect for him and what he's trying to accomplish, and there's many others that in this community that hold strong opinion. Absolutely. I mean, I want to meet with them. I mean, at the end of the day, I think I'm originally from New Brunswick, so, and I do see some similarities between the East Coast and Hamilton. And
that fighting
I do.
spirit.
Hurtful.
Yeah. I think he means
I think
that,
that's a high compliment.
I think it's
You're not referring to the welfare culture and things like that.
I'm referring
Yeah,
to.
that's exactly what he was talking about.
I'm referring
Thanks.
to the hardworking people.
I
of
was
the
quoting
East
John
Coast.
McIttish, by the way, with the welfare culture line.
But you're referring to the hardworking, gritty kind of
and
attitude.
between your eyes type people
Yeah.
that have no difficulty stopping you in the street and telling you exactly what they think. And
So because Graham's critique was that the city's vision lacked the definable, the measurables,
Yeah.
what does each word mean? How do we
Right.
benchmark it? How do we see if we progress on it?
Right.
What's the response to that critique? Is the city's vision something that we are measuring and we are, following? Or is the senior management plan sort of setting the course?
well, that's I think you hit it. What's happened before Christmas? We had a session with council where we talked about how wide-ranging the strategy was and how we have to narrow it. And so some of the thinking that was certainly in the senior management team work plan is now being brought into the strategic plan, so that my view, and I've said this to a number of councillors, I mean, at the end of this term of council, I think all of them, including everyone that works in the administration, we want to be extremely proud of what was accomplished. It's more than just simply operating the show every day and making sure the lawns get cut and garbage gets picked up and everything else. I mean, that's obviously important. We're going to do that as well as we can. But there are certain things that have got to happen in order to kind of realize our potential. And so,
Do you think that's been, this has been my critique for years, is that we seem to be a council that reacts more than proacts. We tend to focus on the here and now.
Yeah.
And in some cases, and I'm not trying to be cynical and protecting our own little fiefdoms, I've been a reporter in other cities, I've worked in other cities, I've seen what I would consider to be councils that are looking long-term more often.
Yeah.
And it sounds as though you're saying that there's been some progress on that front, that you guys are now saying, okay, let's deal with all these immediate things, garbage, et cetera,
Yeah.
but we've got to look at the bigger picture.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said to staff, and I think I said to council as well, I knew day one when I came in that a third of my time would be spent working with council on the issues that are affecting them immediately. A third of my time would be dealing with the issues that arise from having 7,400 people work for you. And then the other third of my time would have to be formulating and driving strategy, because I just can't imagine showing up to work every day and it's nothing but an exercise of fighting fires.
Well, I was going to say, and fighting council. When I think of, and I'm not going to bring up any names of former city managers, but
Yeah.
went down in flames, that these were public disputes with council. And you're so far, it's interesting, Chris, because I see you as kind of being, when you have council, as Ron Corsini said last week in our Laircast, he said, a councillor came up to him recently and said, this is the best managed council, best working together, productive council this certain councillor had ever experienced, that they were all getting along, that they were working well, with the exception of some friction with the mayor's office. And so this is Ron Corsini, a former councillor, kind of giving us this inside comment from a councillor. It would seem to me that maybe in a difficult place, maybe for a guy like you, it's an easy place, but you've got a council that seems to be getting along, a mayor that's had some issues with getting along with the rest of council, and you've got, your third of the day on the 7,500 staff, you've got, your third of the day dealing with the here and now, your third of the day trying to put together a vision for the future. Where's the part of the day on dealing with that conflict, or have you figured a way to avoid that conflict?
So just help me with the
The
conflict.
conflict between the mayor's office and council, because it seems to me that you look as though you're in the camp of the mayor's office often. It seems as though, you're tight with the mayor's office, and I'm wondering, does that put you in any kind of conflict with council?
So I've said this, repeatedly. I work for 16 members of council. So, and so what the optics look like and what the practical reality is, I think, is, everyone has a vote, and at the end of the day, 9 votes carry the day.
Why do you think the optics look the way that they do, if you're in fact endorsing my view of the optics? Why do you think it looks as though you're working, with the mayor's office the way that it looks? And you might not think that it looks that way, but that's certainly been my impression, is that yourself and the mayor and Peggy have quite a close relationship. Why are the optics separate from what you're saying the reality is?
I don't know of any city manager, quite honestly, that over the last 10 years that hasn't had a good working relationship with the mayor and the mayor's office, and obviously tried to do the same with the balance of council. So, I take seriously optics. I have to.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
perceptions matter at the end of the day. I can't just blow them off. At the end of the day, though, you'll find me over on the other side of council, or second floor, as much, sometimes much more, dealing with day-to-day matters with members of council, or talking about, where we're going and how we're going to get there. So,
Well, we set off the toss. Go ahead, Lair.
I think there's and please, I feel terribly even defending you, but I wouldn't want me to defend me either. If we can recall,
We're not talking heck fire. You can speak
no,
now.
but if we can recall that when you became city manager, you leapfrogged over
Yes,
a level
Scott.
of your bosses.
Yeah.
And that has been a non-issue.
Yeah.
So my assumption would then be that you're some sort of bridge builder, conciliatory guy, and not combative like your predecessors in that job. And maybe
Right.
that's how it's working between council and the mayor's office. I don't know. I'm not there to see.
yeah.
But you
Well-
just don't seem to be a
Well, it
put up
definitely.
your dukes kind of guy.
If there's a guy who's going to get along with all those guys and women, it would be you.
No, but there was no resignations out of people who
No, and
jumped over their shoulders to.
Yeah, that's
and-
true. That's
I
a
mean,
good point.
and-
Didn't some people go to leave the city though?
Yeah, I mean, there
Yeah.
was, one retired and one had found his way over to Burlington, so,
Yeah.
which was all, at the end of the day, you can waste a lot of time, fighting with each other and, but it was pretty quick for all members of SMT to kind of say, we want to make this work. I would say probably the first year we're just, for me, it is about building respect and trust. I mean, at the end of the day, if they don't respect me and they don't trust me to do the best that I can in the
So
position.
assuming that they do that with you,
Yeah.
do you think it's possible for them to do it with each other over the course of this term of council? Because some people are concerned, and maybe as the media we perpetuate this, but some people are concerned that the rift that exists or the problems that have happened might be definitive for this term of council. Or do you think that there's a better road ahead?
Oh, there is. I mean, I definitely agree. I think we're 10 years old or thereabouts
Yeah.
as a community.
Since amalgamation?
Absolutely. And so, I liken it to, I look at my own kids, for God's sakes. I mean, where they were, when they were 1 or 2 years old, it was pretty predictable what, would happen in the middle of the night. But,
Don't bring it up. It's a soft spot. We've got a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. We haven't slept in 3
man.
years.
So, I mean, and so I get that, but, we're hitting our, adolescent years. I mean, it's not that the problems are going to go away. It just means that, we're different.
I won't quote you saying that council's adolescence. I don't think that's what you're trying to say.
No, I'm just saying in terms of anything that is maturing, and I agree.
So what do you think contributes to the optics? Do you think it's that there's a narrative in town that we're comfortable with, which is that there has to be personal dysfunction on council, and we all perpetuate it willingly or not? Or do you think that it's just the nature of Hamilton Council? It's always been, as you say, sort of in between the eyes, shooting
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, you know, and for some people, they don't agree with that, and I can understand what they're saying. But at the end of the day, it doesn't get in the way of progress. I mean, at the end of the day, we will have a strategic plan that's going to be approved by council, that's going to focus on very specific things. You know, it's going to focus on prosperity, it's going to focus on service delivery, and it's going to focus on leadership. And when we talk about image, you know, image to me is not, you know, just the waterfront.
So
image.
This is the part where we
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is
This
where I
is when Lauren
scream.
gets out the way. This is our gladiator portion of the show.
That is some serious
Yeah, that's-
expansion of metal.
Isn't
here,
that fantastic?
folks.
Is that what that is?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
It's pretty exciting at these old buildings. Sorry, Lauren, go ahead. Once you stop beating them,
Yeah.
This won't fall off.
it's a relaxed but violent environment here.
Chris, you suggested that we're 10 years old as the new city.
Yeah.
But earlier in this interview, when you gave the somewhat of a grocery list of what's happening,
Yeah.
I don't think you mentioned anything that isn't happening outside of Ward 2.
Wow, this is your whole
And-
suburbs versus the core
No,
argument.
like, I get it. My tax dollars
Yeah.
are good, but
Yeah.
I don't get anything for that, being not a downtown guy.
Well, I would say, if you look at,
Maybe you're too close to Jay Farr's office.
Hey, Mike, is he too close to Jay Farr's office?
well, and actually, it does expand beyond Ward 2. I mean, certainly Pan Am's not entirely in Ward 2.
Oh,
so, I
but
mean,
shouldn't it have been?
Oh, sorry, Ward 3 as well.
There you go.
Pardon me.
And I would say, if you look at some of the transportation work that we're looking at, it starts to expand right across the bottom of the city. In fact, there's a second leg to that called
But
the A
you-
line, which goes
you
up to
set up the
the
framework for grids, right? So,
Yeah,
you know urban intensification is important. The
Yeah.
downtown is the heartbeat of the city, blah, blah,
But if
blah.
Redeemer was going to build another campus
Yeah.
in Flamborough,
Well, because Flamborough
It doesn't
need the
count unless it comes
intensification.
downtown.
Well, because for
Oh, it's
obvious
sickening.
reasons, everyone evaluates a city's health by its downtown. That's just the reality. This is an argument we have
No,
all the
but-
time.
but
that's actually
Yes.
happening, so we don't need to
What's that?
put that
What'd
on
you
the
say,
grocery
Mike?
list.
I said Canada Bread, Maple Leaf.
Canada Bread, Maple Leaf,
Tim
exactly,
Hortons,
yes.
Well,
That's
I mean, the
right,
other
that's
matter
right.
too is
Yes,
that,
that was Mike Krokopoulos setting the record straight for
there
Lauren
we
here.
go. So, I mean, you know, you could talk about the airport, and certainly, you know, the urban official plan is in front of the province right
Mm-hmm.
now. It's going to go through the OMB process. I mean, at some point, we'll see light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully in our collective lifetime.
Do you have
So-
any aspirations to cross over to the dark side, the political side of the game?
Oh, God, no.
No, why not? Because you're
Oh.
articulating a pretty good vision here for the city.
No,
I'm interested.
honest to God, it's got to be one of the most thankless jobs.
So you've got the best job in the city.
I do have that.
And arguably,
And
you'd
people
say
may
that's-
not agree, but at the end of the day, we're at that part of Lake Ontario where things are, there's reasons to be here. And so, as much as, and we need to obviously get, senior management, needs to continue to focus. And again, I go back to the Marco thing, at the end of the day, it's, 7,400 people that are focused on certain things and doing them well.
Would be the way that any company has ever succeeded.
Well, it's like, the guy that lays down on a bed of nails, that trick, it's really not much of a trick because the weight is all distributed amongst 1,000 nails. And
Or
so,
the 7,400 nails.
He's a
7,400
He's a sage old guy. I feel like I'm listening to ancient proverbs on Twitter.
no,
here.
it's,
Listening
it's,
to- If you missed the producer, we got to get this guy a mic. He said, "Are you calling them pricks?"
no,
But-
but 7,400, strong nails.
Sure,
As opposed to a person that lays down on a bed of nail.
Right, right.
Which would be a hell of a feat. And so
It's
you
the whole
can't-
thing. Many hands.
I
to pierce the lung
I
of
can't be
their
the
bubble.
only one in this room who is shocked that only 7,400 people do the good work of our city.
Oh, you're making another crack about. I don't even know what you're going at now.
Well, but, and the other thing to maybe point out too is that, this
lot of
year, our budget, our operating budget, we're at 2%. I suspect we'll be below that.
that's tremendous. You were the first city manager, weren't you, under your time that came in at a 0% increase?
Well, last year, our departments came in below zero. It
That's
was
amazing.
boards and agencies that were.
So let me
above.
ask you this, because I don't think anyone can really
This guy.
argue, or at least I'm not going to argue that you're not doing a good job compared to the stuff we've seen with city management over the years. I think you're doing an excellent job. That being said, you identified that optics are a bit of an issue, and I'm, of course, a communications person. Optics to me are very important. How do we change, let's end on this, Chris, how do we change the optics? Given that you understand where the city should go, and you sound like you got it under control, and you're working well with everybody at council, how do we as a city change those optics? How do we hear what you're doing, or your explanations of things like that Red Hill flood, in a way that the consumer of the media in this community actually ingests it? Because that flew right over, and I mean, Mike's sitting here, I know, but Microcopoulos can't save the world. Almost, Mike. I mean, pretty close. You saw me one time somewhere here in the Laircast. I said that, you should be working for Bertina or somebody who really needs the help. But Mike is excellent at the communication stuff that he does. But I'm not just talking about your office. I'm talking about generally as a city. How do we get that vision out there? How do we get that message out there? The trajectory you're talking about. How does that become the narrative as opposed to the narrative that we currently have?
Well, about 20 years ago, Vision 2020 was, created here in Hamilton, and in fact was recognized internationally, and that became a very important community piece, planning piece that we're extremely proud of. I would say, in the next, few months, I don't think it'll even take that long, when we crystallize what we need to do over the balance of this term of council, what are the specific focuses? It has to be, communicated obviously beyond just the council chambers. And so it's going to be critical that it gets communicated to the 7,400 staff and to, the 520,000 people live here in Hamilton.
So are you going to get on social media?
You know what? I think I have to come into this century.
I think you should encourage the mayor's office also, that social media might just be a fast way to get to people, just like the mayor of Toronto tweets out every day, and the head of the school board in Toronto. This is a pet peeve for me, because so much information is being disseminated on social media.
Yeah, and for us, we've talked about open data and everything else, and it's not a question of if, it's an absolute. At the end of the day, governments, and this is going on right now in terms of citizen engagement, it's not an option, it's an absolute given. And how we communicate
Citizens are engaged, it's a matter of taking the blocks out of the way.
Yeah,
right? Because
no,
they're circumventing the blocks right now. You might as well just, take the block. The horse has left the barn, to use an analogy.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's gone.
And that's the communication policies coming forward, and it's going to talk to.
Mike, is that the one you're writing?
That's the one.
That's
the one that
the
Mike's
city's
doing.
communication, as opposed to the other day. Okay.
Yeah, no.
That was the mayor's office communication policy. You see the optics issue I'm talking about, gentlemen? Everyone thought that was Mike's and the city's communication policy as opposed to the mayor's office's
I wouldn't
venture.
say everyone.
Everyone
Maybe
I
the 4
talked to.
people that knew about it.
The 4 people who went. Sorry.
But it's again, we have to.
This is one of those moments where I wish this was a video podcast. Mike's
Yeah,
like
okay. Well, maybe we should
Mike's like
describe
17
it.
shades of
Mike's
purple.
looking really awkward right now. I think
Good that
he's
we've done our
red-faced, and so hopefully that policy would start to.
Well, we look forward to the communications policy, and
Yep.
You've been great to speak with. I appreciate that you've just been very candid and practical. I know you said you're a simple guy. You're clearly not a simple guy, but you laid it out in simple terms. It gives me some hope for the city, so thank you.
I didn't realize I could have not dressed up for
I
this.
told, didn't he? See, if he was the communications guy you think he is, Mike would have.
Okay,
No,
on that
come on.
note.
I'm giving you props, dude. I got to give you a shot. He was doing all the due diligence with me, exploring the opportunity, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but that's because I'm good at what I do too, right? That's the issue. But the point is that I told him many times this is a very casual, chill,
Yeah, that's
no
good.
camera environment. So
Yeah.
if you come back someday, you can dress more casually
I will.
and imbibe a little bit.
Yeah, I'll wear my Bruins jersey.
Yeah, Mike's not going to let you come. Mike won't come back, but you're more than welcome to come back.
harsh.
He's a little mad at me for the shot. I think you're great. You know this. Thanks.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you
That
for
was
being
really
here.
great.
Well, you know what?
Enjoyed that.
It's just to understand what people are actually doing and saying as opposed to how we read it in the paper or how it gets parsed out there. So thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.